The throne room of Cindermoth Fortress reeked of arrogance and burnt ozone. General Draxon, all 8 feet of chitinous alien superiority, stood before a holographic display showing his conquered territories, 12 star systems painted in the crimson of his empire. His war council, a collection of species that had learned to nod at appropriate intervals, watched as he gestured grandly at his greatest achievement. Behold! Draxon's voice boomed through the cavernous chamber, each word dripping with the kind of self-satisfaction that could power a small moon. The most secure prison network in galactic history. 36 facilities across 21 worlds. 0 escapes. Not one. Not ever. Commander Brix, whose purple skin had developed a nervous twitch over the past few months, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, perhaps we should focus on the rebellion activities in the outer... Silence! Draxon's 4 eyes gleamed with fanatic pride. Do you not understand what we have accomplished? Every species that has ever challenged us now rots behind quantum-locked barriers. The Vorthak mind-benders, contained in psychic dampening fields. The crystalline collective's hive minds, isolated in individual cells. Even those accursed humans with their unpredictable nature. The general paused, savoring the moment like fine wine. My prisons are more than mere detention facilities. They are monuments to order itself, each one designed specifically for the psychological and physical limitations of its inhabitants. Escape is not merely improbable, it is fundamentally impossible. That's when the applause started. Slow, deliberate, mocking. Every head in the room turned toward the sound, which echoed from the main entrance, with the confidence of someone who had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to prove. The massive doors, solid durasteel, 3 feet thick, guarded by sensors that could detect a flea's heartbeat, stood wide open. And through them walked Trouble in a prison jumpsuit. She wasn't particularly tall, this human female, maybe 5.5 feet of compact muscle and attitude. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her brown eyes held the kind of sparkle that suggested she found the entire universe personally amusing. The orange fabric of her clothing bore the unmistakable markings of Facility 9, Draxon's crown jewel of incarceration, located in the molten core of a dead star. Well, well, she said, her voice carrying the casual tone of someone commenting on the weather. Don't stop the speech on my account. I was particularly enjoying the part about fundamentally impossible. Really, it was inspiring. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as a meditation aid. Guards throughout the room reached for weapons, but their movements had the uncertain quality of people who weren't quite sure what they were looking at. General Draxon's mandibles clicked together, never a good sign for anyone in his immediate vicinity. Who dares? Oh, sorry. The woman extended her hand in a gesture that was either a greeting or the galaxy's most casual act of war. Cassandra Hawkins. Call me Cass. Most people do, right up until they realize I've stolen their keys, picked their locks, and made off with their dignity. But hey, she gestured around the opulent throne room. Nice place. Very evil overlord meets interior decorator. I especially like what you've done with the skulls. Draxon's voice dropped to a growl that could have stripped paint from a battleship. Impossible. Facility 9 is impregnable. The quantum locks alone are remarkably well-engineered, Cass interrupted, pulling a small device from her pocket. The quantum lock mechanism, the crown jewel of Draxon's security technology, gleamed in the throne room's crimson lighting. Though I have to say, your engineers made one tiny mistake. They assumed prisoners would try to break out of their cells, not break into the maintenance systems. Amateur hour, really. The general's 4 eyes focused on the device with the intensity of a supernova. That was... Locked in the most secure vault in the most secure prison in your most secure system? Cass tossed the mechanism in the air and caught it with casual ease. Yeah, about that. You know what I love about impregnable security systems? They're designed by people who think in straight lines. Prisoner wants out, so we keep prisoner in. But what happens when the prisoner doesn't want out? What happens when she wants to study the system, learn its patterns, understand its weaknesses? Commander Brix found his voice first, though it came out as more of a squeak. Sir, this is clearly impossible. Perhaps she's a hologram, or... Oh, I'm real enough. Cass reached into another pocket and produced a data pad. In fact, I'm so real that I took the liberty of documenting a few observations during my stay. Your night shift guards in Cell Block Delta? They play cards during security sweeps. Your quantum field generators? They cycle down for 0.3 seconds every hour for maintenance checks. And your warden, Gant? He keeps the master override codes written on a piece of paper in his desk drawer. Old school. I respect that. Draxon's rage was building like pressure in a faulty reactor. You lie. My prisons are perfect. My security is absolute. No one escapes. No one. And that's when Cass smiled. Not the polite smile of diplomacy or the nervous grin of someone caught in a lie. This was the smile of a predator who had just realized her prey was exactly as stupid as she'd hoped. Then, where? She asked, spreading her arms wide to encompass the impossibility of her presence. Do you think I came from? The question hung in the air like a bomb with a very slow fuse. Around the throne room, alien faces displayed the universal expression of beings whose worldview had just been drop-kicked into another dimension. Some stared at Cass. Others looked at their general. A few seemed to be questioning the fundamental nature of reality itself. Draxon's response, when it came, had all the subtlety of a collapsing star. Guards! Seize her! What happened next would be talked about in cantinas across 3 sectors for years to come. 20 of Draxon's best soldiers, each one a veteran of a dozen campaigns, armed with weapons that could level city blocks, moved to surround one unarmed human female in a prison jumpsuit. She was gone before they took their third step. Not vanished, not teleported, not mysteriously disappeared. Gone in the way that water is gone when you try to hold it, or the way victory is gone when you start believing your own propaganda. One moment, she was there, hands raised in mock surrender. The next, she was somehow behind Commander Brix, relieving him of his sidearm with the casual efficiency of someone picking fruit. You know, she said conversationally, examining the weapon with professional interest, I've always admired Vorthak energy pistols. Elegant design, reliable power source, and they make this wonderful humming sound when they charge up. The weapon hummed obligingly. Just like that. 20 soldiers had become 20 very nervous soldiers, all of whom were suddenly unsure whether they should be pointing their guns at her or at each other. In the confusion, Cass had somehow acquired not just a weapon, but also Brix's communicator, his access key, and, most impressively, his dignity. Now, she continued, settling into a comfortable stance that suggested she had all the time in the world, let's have that chat about your prison system, shall we? Because I've got some notes, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. General Draxon's mandibles were clicking so rapidly, they sounded like a malfunctioning data processor. This is not possible. You cannot be here. My security protocols are adorable, Cass finished. Really? It's like watching a child build sandcastles and declare them earthquake-proof. But here's the thing about humans, General. We don't just think outside the box. We forget the box exists in the first place. She gestured toward the holographic display of his conquered territories. You see a prison system. I see a puzzle. You see impregnable security. I see a challenge. You see the impossible made manifest in your throne room. And you know what I see? The pause was perfectly timed, the kind of dramatic beat that would have made a Hollywood director weep with joy. Tuesday. The general's roar of rage could have powered a fusion reactor. You mock me in my own fortress. You dare to suggest that my perfect system has been treating me like a revolving door for the past 6 months? Cass interrupted cheerfully. Facility 9 was just this morning's workout. Yesterday, it was the blackout station in the Keth Nebula. Last week, the mind cage on Tauran Prime. Oh, and don't get me started on that adorable little number. You built in the asteroid field. What did you call it? The Tomb of Despair? Really, points for dramatic naming, but the ventilation system was a dead giveaway. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of profound, universe-questioning silence that occurs when everything you thought you knew turns out to be a comfortable lie you told yourself while reality was busy making other plans. Commander Brix, still processing the loss of his weapon and his worldview, managed to stammer, She's been escaping for months? Escaping, infiltrating, documenting, And occasionally redecorating, Cass confirmed. You should see what I did with the guard station at Facility 12. Moved all the furniture 3 inches to the left. Subtle psychological warfare. Drives people absolutely insane trying to figure out what's different. General Draxon's 4 eyes had focused on Cass with the intensity of someone trying to solve a riddle that might determine the fate of his empire. What do you want? It was exactly the question she'd been waiting for, and her smile turned sharp enough to cut through the thick tension in the room. To prove a point, she said simply. See, you've been going around the galaxy telling everyone that resistance is futile, that your prisons can hold anyone, that escape is impossible. And you know what? A lot of species believe you. They surrender without fighting because they think there's no point. She paused, letting the implications sink in like acid through armor plating. But humans? We have this character flaw, General. We hear impossible and think challenge accepted. We see your perfect system and immediately start wondering how it works, what makes it tick, and exactly how many different ways we can break it. The energy pistol in her hand wasn't aimed at anyone in particular, but somehow everyone in the room felt personally targeted. So I've been doing a little experiment. Every time you capture a human, every time you throw us in your impregnable prisons, I've been there first. Breaking in, mapping the systems, leaving little gifts for my fellow inmates. Care packages, if you will. Tools, maps, and the occasional motivational note. General Draxon's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. You've been helping them escape. Oh, General. Cass's laugh had all the warmth of liquid nitrogen. I haven't been helping them escape. I've been teaching them that your prisons are just puzzles waiting to be solved. And you know what humans do with puzzles? She didn't wait for an answer. We solved them. All of them. Every single one. What happened next would have made military historians weep and tactical analysts require therapy. General Draxon, faced with the complete collapse of everything he'd built his reputation on, did what any reasonable galactic dictator would do in such circumstances. He completely lost his mind. Capture her, he bellowed, spittle flying from his mandibles. I want her alive. I want her conscious. And I want her in the deepest, darkest, most secure facility in my empire. Cass tilted her head thoughtfully. You know, most people would consider that a threat. Me? I'm already planning the escape route. The throne room erupted into chaos. Guards converged from every direction, energy weapons charged and ready. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing every exit. Containment fields sparked to life, creating a web of lethal energy that would fry anything that tried to pass through them. In the middle of it all, Cassandra Hawkins stood perfectly still and started counting down from 10. 10, she said, as the first wave of guards reached her position. She wasn't there anymore. 9, came her voice from somewhere near the tactical display, though no one could quite locate the source. 8. Now she was behind the War Council, somehow having acquired Commander Brix's ceremonial cloak. By the time she reached 3, half the guards were pointing weapons at each other. Draxon was screaming orders that contradicted his previous orders, and Cass was sitting in his throne, feet up on the armrest. 2, she continued pleasantly, examining her fingernails. 1. The lights went out. When the emergency illumination kicked in 30 seconds later, Cass was gone. In her place, written across the back of Draxon's throne in what appeared to be luminescent paint, was a message. Thanks for the hospitality. Your security is adorable. CH below that, in smaller text. P.S. You might want to check Facility 18. I left you a present. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Draxon's mandibles grinding together with enough force to crush diamonds. Sir? Commander Brix ventured, his voice barely above a whisper. Get me a direct line to every facility commander in the network, Draxon said, his tone carrying the deadly calm of a neutron star about to collapse. And somebody find out what she did to Facility 18. The answer came back 20 minutes later, delivered by a very pale communications officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Sir, Facility 18 reports a breach in their maximum security wing. Casualties? Draxon's voice could have flash-frozen a small ocean. None, sir. But all the prisoners in Block C are gone. Vanished. The cells were still locked. The guards were unharmed, and the security footage shows nothing. Draxon's 4 eyes focused with laser intensity. Nothing? The prisoners were there during the evening count. By morning, empty cells. No trace of how they left. No signs of forced entry. The only thing they found was... The officer swallowed hard. A note, sir. Read it. Your locks are suggestions. Your walls are guidelines. Your guards are lovely people who make terrible coffee. Next time, try decaf. The management. If rage could be weaponized, Draxon's fury at that moment could have cracked a planet's crust. But beneath the volcanic anger, something else was building. Something that looked suspiciously like fear. Because, for the first time in his conquering career, General Draxon was facing an enemy who didn't want to defeat him in battle. She wanted to make him look ridiculous. And she was succeeding. Over the next 6 weeks, Cassandra Hawkins became the nightmare that haunted Draxon's dreams and turned his waking hours into an ongoing exercise in creative paranoia. She didn't just escape from his prisons. She treated them like a personal amusement park. Facility 23, the frozen hell of Korth Station. She broke in during a blizzard, liberated 38 political prisoners, and left a snowman in the warden's office. The snowman wore the warden's hat and held a sign reading, "Chillin' like a villain," but with better fashion sense. The psychic dampening complex on Mindras 4, she somehow bypassed every side-eye shield in the facility, freed a dozen telepathic resistance fighters, and rewired the prison's communication system to broadcast her thoughts directly to Draxon's flagship. For 3 hours, every speaker in his command ship played a running commentary on his tactical mistakes, delivered in Cass's cheerfully sarcastic mental voice. "Really, General," her thoughts had echoed through his own command center, "you might want to consider anger management classes. All that rage can't be good for your chitin." But it was her escape from the temporal lock facility that finally pushed Draxon over the edge into full-blown obsession. The facility existed outside normal space-time, accessible only through quantum tunnels that required precise dimensional coordinates. Prisoners were kept in temporal stasis fields that slowed their personal time to a crawl. A second for them was a month in real time. It was considered theoretically impossible to escape, since any attempt would take subjective years to complete. Cass broke out in what the facility computers recorded as -3 minutes. She had somehow escaped before she was imprisoned. The security footage showed her walking out of an empty cell while her own arrest was still being processed in the entry bay. She waved cheerfully at the cameras as she passed and left a note that simply read, "Time is a flat circle, but your security is more of a wonky triangle." Future Cass, or maybe past Cass, hard to tell. By the time Draxon received the report, she had already sent him a message through official channels, complete with proper military formatting and transmission codes. "General Draxon," the message began, "thank you for the fascinating tour of your temporal facility. I particularly enjoyed the paradox you've created by designing a prison that can be escaped retroactively. Your engineers have accidentally invented a new form of causality violation. Congratulations, you're now in violation of several fundamental laws of physics. Respectfully submitted, but not really, Cassandra Hawkins, freelance temporal anomaly." That's when Commander Brix finally worked up the courage to voice what everyone on the command staff was thinking. "Sir, perhaps we should consider that this human might be beyond our current capabilities to contain." Draxon's response was to have Brix confined to quarters for suggesting retreat in the face of a single annoying biped. But privately, in the deepest recesses of his calculating mind, the general was beginning to formulate a different kind of plan. If conventional security couldn't hold Cassandra Hawkins, perhaps it was time to try something unconventional. Something personal. The breakthrough came when his intelligence network finally managed to piece together fragments of Cass's background. She hadn't always been a freelance chaos agent. Once upon a time, she'd been Lieutenant Commander Cassandra Hawkins of the Earth Colonial Defense Force, a military engineer with a specialty in defensive systems and a reputation for creative problem-solving. Her home colony, New Geneva, had been one of Draxon's early conquests. Standard procedure, orbital bombardment, ground invasion, total subjugation. The colony had surrendered after 48 hours of fighting, and its population had been processed, according to imperial guidelines. But Cass hadn't been on New Geneva when it fell. She'd been off-world, visiting her sister on a nearby research station. By the time she returned, her home was gone, her family was dead, and her entire world had been reduced to a footnote in Draxon's conquest records. Interesting, the general mused, reviewing the intelligence files. She's not just escaping for sport. This is personal. Commander Brix, recently released from quarters and looking considerably more nervous than usual, cleared his throat. Sir, if I may suggest, perhaps we could use this information to what? Negotiate? Draxon's laugh was like grinding metal. No, Commander. We're going to do something much more satisfying. We're going to give Ms. Hawkins exactly what she wants. Which is? Draxon's mandibles curved into what might have been a smile, if smiles were designed by something that had never experienced joy. A challenge. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every corner of Draxon's empire and beyond. It was formal, official, and completely insane. To Cassandra Hawkins, it began, "You have made your point regarding the inadequacies of our current detention facilities. In recognition of your unique talents, I hereby issue a formal challenge. Report to Cindermaw Fortress within 72 standard hours, and I will personally design a containment system specifically for you. Escape from this facility, and I will acknowledge your superiority and withdraw from 3 systems of your choosing. Fail to escape within 1 standard month, and you will accept permanent imprisonment for your crimes against the Empire. Do you accept? General Draxon, commander of 12 systems, breaker of worlds, and apparently inadequate prison designer." The response came back within an hour, delivered through official diplomatic channels with all the proper authentication codes. "General Draxon," it read, "your terms are acceptable, with one small modification. When I escape, and I will escape, you'll withdraw from 5 systems, not 3. Also, I'm bringing snacks. Your prison food is terrible. Signed, Cassandra, challenge accepted. Hawkins, professional prison critic and amateur comedian." Below the signature was a small addendum. "P.S. I hope you've been working on that anger management thing. You're going to need it." General Draxon stared at the message for a long moment, then began to laugh. It wasn't the laugh of someone enjoying a good joke. It was the laugh of a being who had spent so long staring into the abyss that he'd forgotten the abyss was staring back. "Commander Brix," he said, his voice carrying a note of anticipation that made everyone in the room deeply uncomfortable. "Clear my schedule. We have a prison to design." As reports flooded in from across his empire, more escapes, more missing prisoners, more mocking notes left in impossible locations, Draxon threw himself into his new project with the fervor of someone who had finally found his true calling. Somewhere out there, Cassandra Hawkins was probably planning her next impossible escape. And for the first time since this whole affair began, General Draxon was looking forward to it. 71 hours and 58 minutes after issuing his challenge, General Draxon received a message that made his security chief weep openly, and his head of intelligence request immediate reassignment to a nice, quiet posting in the Outer Rim. "General," the message began, transmitted from inside Cindermaw Fortress's own communication array. "I'm here early. Hope you don't mind. I let myself in. Your external defenses are charmingly retro, by the way. Very early Galactic Empire chic. I'm currently in Conference Room B, helping myself to your surprisingly good coffee. The pastries could use work, though. When you're ready to show me this super special prison you've designed, just follow the trail of security alerts." Cass. The trail of security alerts was, indeed, impressive. Perimeter breach on Level 9. Unauthorized access to the armory on Level 15. Someone had apparently reprogrammed the cafeteria dispensers to serve only dessert items. The environmental controls in the barracks had been adjusted to play soothing nature sounds, specifically the mating calls of Andromedan swamp beasts. And somehow, impossibly, every single security camera in the fortress was displaying the same message, written in elegant script across their feeds. "Knock, knock. Who's there? Your friendly neighborhood prison critic." By the time Draxon and his guards reached Conference Room B, Cass was gone. In her place was a holographic projection showing her sitting in what appeared to be his private study, the one behind 6 layers of biometric locks and quantum encryption. "Hello, General." the hologram said cheerfully, waving a teacup. Lovely decor in here. Very megalomaniac meets interior designer. I especially appreciate the collection of conquered world snow globes. A bit on the nose, but I respect the commitment to theme. Draxon's mandibles clicked with enough force to crack steel. How did you get into your private study? Trade secret, I'm afraid. But don't worry. I didn't touch anything important. Well, except for your personal journal. Fascinating reading, by the way. Did you know you mention your mother 63 times? And not in a good way. Have you considered therapy? The hologram flickered as Cass stood up, still holding the teacup with the casual ease of someone at a garden party, rather than someone who had just violated the most secure location in the fortress. But I'm not here to psychoanalyze your clearly complicated relationship with maternal authority figures, she continued. I'm here for your challenge. So, where's this impossible prison you've designed for little old me? Draxon's response came through gritted teeth that could have been used as industrial equipment. Follow the illuminated path, Ms. Hawkins, and don't touch anything. Too late, Cass called back cheerfully. I've already touched everything. Your security system thinks I'm Commander Bricks. Your environmental controls think I'm the cleaning service. And your personal AI assistant thinks I'm your long-lost daughter. We had a lovely chat about your childhood. Apparently, you were quite the artist before you went into the conquering business. The illuminated path led through the heart of Cindermaw Fortress, past layers of security that would have made a paranoid AI weep with envy. Quantum scanners, biometric analyzers, gravitic sensors, temporal displacement detectors, every piece of advanced security technology in known space had been crammed into the corridors leading to Draxon's masterpiece. All of them registered Cass as authorized personnel. You know, her voice echoed from hidden speakers as Draxon and his entourage made their way through the maze of sensors. I have to admire the thoroughness. Really, this is impressive work. Your security team deserves a raise. Also, you might want to check the coffee machine in the guard station on level 12. I think it's becoming sentient. They found her in the central observation chamber, standing before what could only be described as the product of a brilliant mind's complete psychological breakdown. Draxon's special prison wasn't a cell. It was a transparent cube, 20 feet on each side, suspended in the center of a spherical chamber lined with every conceivable form of sensor, scanner, and defensive system. The cube itself was a masterwork of paranoid engineering. The walls were composed of layered quantum glass that existed in multiple dimensions, other sparks of awareness flickering in the cosmic night. Consider instead. She walked calmly to the central control console and began typing. You see, she continued conversationally as her fingers danced over the interface, the thing about designing a perfect prison for Cassandra Hawkins is that you have to assume Cassandra Hawkins is working alone. But here's a fun fact about humans. General, we're pack animals. We work better in groups. We share information. We coordinate. We plan. Alarms began shrieking throughout the chamber as her unauthorized access triggered every security protocol simultaneously. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, containment fields sparked to life, and automated weapons systems swiveled to target the intruder. None of them could get a lock on her. Computer, Cass said cheerfully, continuing to type despite the chaos erupting around her. Initiate emergency prisoner transfer protocol. Authorization. Hawkins Alpha 99, Zulu. Authorization confirmed, the AI responded, in a tone that suggested it was having the best day of its artificial life. Emergency transfer protocol activated. All maximum security prisoners are being relocated to secondary facilities for their safety. Draxon's roar of rage was audible even over the blaring alarms. That authorization doesn't exist. It does now, Cass replied. I added it to your system about 6 months ago, along with a few other useful administrative functions. You really should change your root passwords more often. Throughout Draxon's empire, emergency protocols were activating. Maximum security facilities began evacuating their most dangerous prisoners to secondary locations that didn't exist in any official capacity, but had been established by a network of escaped prisoners, reformed guards, and anyone else who'd gotten tired of living under imperial rule. In other words, Cass hadn't just been escaping from prisons for the past 6 months. She'd been building an underground railroad. Impossible, Draxon snarled, advancing on her with murder in his 4 eyes. My systems are secure. My network is impenetrable. Your systems are adorable, Cass corrected, still typing. And your network has been mine for months. Every time you captured me, every time you threw me in a new facility, I wasn't just studying your prisons. I was studying your entire infrastructure, learning your protocols, mapping your communication networks, identifying your weak points. The typing stopped. The alarms fell silent. And in that sudden quiet, Cass turned to face the general with the expression of someone who'd just finished a particularly satisfying crossword puzzle. You know what the really beautiful part is? She asked. You did this to yourself. Every obsessive security measure, every paranoid precaution, every redundant backup system, they all require communication with Central Command. And once I had access to Central Command, she spread her hands in a gesture that encompassed the chaos surrounding them. I had access to everything. Draxon's mandibles ground together with enough force to generate sparks. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? I still have my fleet. I still have my armies. I still have a communications network that thinks I'm your most trusted advisor, Cass interrupted. A logistics system that believes I have the authority to redirect supply shipments, and a military command structure that's currently receiving what appear to be your personal orders to stand down and withdraw to defensive positions. The color drained from Draxon's chitinous features. What have you done? Nothing permanent, Cass assured him. I'm not a conqueror, General. I'm just someone who doesn't like bullies. Your empire will survive. Your armies will regroup. But your reign of terror? That's about to become significantly less terrifying. She walked to the transparent cube that had been designed to hold her and ran her hand along its quantum glass surface with something approaching fondness. This really is beautiful work, she said. It would have held me. Maybe not forever, but certainly long enough for you to feel like you'd won. The problem is, you designed it to contain one person. You never considered that one person might be working for thousands. As if summoned by her words, figures began materializing throughout the chamber. Not literally materializing, that would have been impossible, but appearing from hidden passages, service tunnels, maintenance shafts, and ventilation systems with the smooth coordination of a plan months in the making. They were humans, mostly. Former prisoners, escaped inmates, and a few who looked like they might have once been guards or technicians. Each one wore the same expression of grim satisfaction, and each one was armed with weapons that had obviously been liberated from Imperial armories. General Draxon, said one of them, a woman with graying hair and the bearing of someone who'd once held command authority. I'm Captain Knoll, formerly of your prison security division. I'd like to personally thank you for the excellent training in institutional weaknesses. It's been invaluable in our recent career change. Draxon looked around the chamber, counting figures and calculating odds with the desperate efficiency of someone whose worldview was undergoing rapid demolition. How many? How many what? Cass asked innocently. How many of my people have you corrupted? How many of my facilities have you compromised? How many of my prisoners have you released? Cass considered the question with the thoughtful expression of someone doing complex mathematics. Well, let's see. Active sympathizers in your command structure. Maybe 300. Compromised facilities. Oh, all of them, eventually. Released prisoners. She smiled. Would it help if I said most of them? The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Draxon's worldview collapsing in on itself like a neutron star, reaching critical mass. This was never about escaping, was it? He asked quietly. Oh, no. The escaping part was fun, don't get me wrong. But no, this was always about something bigger. Cass's expression grew serious for the first time since she'd strolled into his throne room. This was about proving that your perfect system was built on a lie, that no prison is truly escape-proof when the people inside it refuse to accept that they belong there. She gestured toward the figures surrounding them, toward the chaos of alarms and alerts still echoing from the corridors beyond. You wanted to break spirits, General, to make people believe that resistance was futile. But you made one crucial mistake. You assumed that breaking someone's body was the same as breaking their hope. And hope, it turns out, is a lot harder to contain than you thought. Draxon's four eyes focused on her with the intensity of a dying star. What happens now? Now. Cass's smile returned, bright and sharp and absolutely merciless. Now you get to find out what it feels like to be on the other side of your own justice system. She turned toward the transparent cube, its quantum walls gleaming in the chamber's harsh lighting. I told you this was beautiful work, General. It really would have held me. But here's the thing about perfect prisons. The cube's entrance began to cycle open, with a soft hiss of equalizing atmosphere. They work just as well from the outside in. The beautiful thing about poetic justice, Cass reflected, as she watched General Draxon stare at his own perfect prison, is that it doesn't require any poetry at all. Sometimes the universe writes its own punchlines. You know, she said conversationally, I was going to escape from this thing. Had the whole plan worked out. Exploit the temporal stabilizers, create a quantum feedback loop, walk out during the confusion. Standard Tuesday morning stuff. Draxon's mandibles clicked once, sharp and bitter. But then I realized something better. Cass gestured toward the transparent cube with the air of someone unveiling a masterpiece. You didn't design this to hold a prisoner. You designed it to hold me. Specifically. Personally. This isn't a detention facility. It's a monument to your obsession. The truth hit him like a collapsing star. Every sensor, every failsafe, every paranoid redundancy had been calibrated for one person. The perfect prison for Cassandra Hawkins would be absolutely useless for containing anyone else, especially someone with 4 arms, chitinous armor, and a completely different biochemistry. The quantum glass won't adapt to your molecular structure, she continued cheerfully. The gravitic fields are tuned for human physiology. The atmospheric processors are set for Earth-normal air mix. And the AI? She grinned. Well, let's just say it's very confused about why its primary target is trying to get in instead of out. Captain Knoll stepped forward, her expression carrying the satisfaction of someone settling a very old debt. General Draxon, by the authority of the Free Worlds Coalition and about 15 different galactic war crimes tribunals, you're under arrest. The Free Worlds Coalition? Draxon's voice cracked like breaking ice. That's impossible. You destroyed the leadership, Cass interrupted. The bureaucrats, the politicians, the people who thought resistance could be organized through proper channels and formal declarations. But you know what you didn't destroy? The people who knew that sometimes the only proper response to tyranny is to laugh in its face and steal its lunch money. The cube's entrance cycled fully open, and Draxon found himself facing the impossible choice between imprisonment and, well, imprisonment, but with significantly more dignity. He chose dignity. As the quantum barriers sealed behind him, Draxon pressed his hands against the transparent walls and fixed Cass with a stare that could have burned through hull plating. This isn't over. You're right, Cass agreed. It's not over. It's just different. See? I could have killed you, General. Could have destroyed your empire, scattered your fleets, turned your own weapons against your worlds. But that would make me just another conqueror. She leaned closer to the cube, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. Instead, I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to let you live in the most secure, most perfectly designed, most absolutely escape-proof prison in galactic history. The one you built yourself. And every day, every hour, every minute you spend in there, you're going to remember that it was never about the locks or the walls or the security systems. Her smile was bright enough to power a small city. It was about remembering that humans don't stay in boxes. We build bridges. We make friends. We turn your own systems against you. And then we leave thank you notes, because our mothers raised us to be polite. As alarms echoed throughout the fortress, and reports flooded in of Imperial forces laying down their weapons across 3 sectors, Cassandra Hawkins turned away from the transparent cube and its lone occupant. Besides, she called back over her shoulder, someone has to stay here and explain to the war crimes tribunals how you managed to accidentally imprison yourself. I'm sure they'll find it fascinating. The last thing General Draxon heard before the soundproofing activated was the sound of human laughter echoing through his fortress. Not cruel or mocking, but warm and genuine and absolutely, impossibly free. 3 months later, reports would reach him through official channels that his former empire had transformed into something unprecedented, a voluntary confederation of worlds where species worked together instead of being conquered. His prisons had become schools, his weapons factories had been converted to manufacturing hospitals and transportation networks. His fleet had been repurposed into a galactic emergency response service. And at the center of it all, coordinating relief efforts and mediating disputes between former enemies, was a woman in a maintenance jumpsuit who insisted that the universe's problems were just puzzles waiting for the right perspective. Some of his former officers visited occasionally, mostly to thank him for accidentally teaching them that the strongest chains are the ones we build ourselves. They always brought updates on the Confederation's progress and occasionally asked his opinion on administrative challenges. He never answered, but he listened. Outside his perfect prison, the universe continued its ancient work of proving that no cage, no matter how well designed, can hold the one thing tyrants fear most: the unshakable human conviction that impossible just means no one's figured out how yet. After all, where did he think she came from?